children more time in nature. So welcome. We are here for the ICAN Getting Comfortable with Risky Play workshop. Thank you all for joining us on a Thursday evening. I'm Dr. Carla Gull, and we've got Dr. Joanna Spotts as a guest speaker with us today, and we're glad to have her. If you could go ahead and advance the slide. And so just a little bit about ICAN. This is Indiana Children in Nature Network, and I know many of you are ambassadors and you've waved before, but feel free to give another wave. Some of you might be on the steering committee as well. Feel free to go ahead and give a wave too. We appreciate all the support in this. It is part of the Environmental Educators Association of Indiana, and we're really trying to get state-specific resources. We do have email updates, so feel free to sign up. Within a couple of days, I'll send out a recording of this, and then also links to some of the resources that we share as part of this as well. Some things that we do as part of this are ICAN Nature Play Days. That is in June. We'll have some dates up on the screen a little bit later. And then also ICAN Play 30. So take a pledge to get outside at least 30 minutes every day. And I know Megan, who's on the call, that consistency, even if it's for a short amount of time, really makes a difference from what she said as well. She's like, yep. I've heard her talk about it many times. And we'll share some other resources and activities that we have going on at the end of our time here. And we look forward to having you with us. Okay, go ahead, Joanna. Okay, the mission of ICAN is to foster that connection of children, families, and communities, and really helping all of those benefits of physical, emotional, intellectual things. And while it's not here, social would be part of that as well. While we're also building a lifelong love of nature. So we try to raise awareness of those benefits of connecting with nature, promote unstructured play and time outdoors for children and adults. We need it too. And then engaging a diverse network of people and collaborations. And so we're always looking to partner with other groups and organizations and people, because we know we have a lot of fascinating people here within the state of Indiana and beyond. And so I appreciate that. And you can go ahead up to the next one. There we go. Okay, so just an introduction to myself. I am the state coordinator of Indiana Children in Nature Network. I work full-time with the University of Phoenix, teaching beginning college classes online. I've also got Facebook group, Loose Parts Play, and another one, Loose Parts Learning K-3 classrooms, and this book, Loose Parts Learning as well. I have a podcast, Loose Parts Nature Play, and you can find me at loosepartsnatureplay.org. And I did just kind of want to mention that one of my qualifications for being here is that I do academic research on tree climbing. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of that insight and things that I've learned about risky play through the several studies around tree climbing that I've conducted with my co-researchers. And then we'll go ahead and have Dr. Joanna Spotts introduce herself as well.
Hello there. This is not my book cover. This is just me. Hello from Vermont, where strangely enough, the snow is melting away as we speak in the rain. I have been an educator for 20 years this year, as a matter of fact, and I have taught all grade levels pretty much. 4th and 5th grade in an inner city charter school. I've taught in a one-room schoolhouse, and most recently, I've taught in I teach in a nature-based early childhood education center in rural Vermont. And being outside in all kinds of weather, adopting there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing choices. I learned that when I lived in Alaska. So I've had a lot of different places to live and a lot of different teaching experiences. And like Carla said, I finished my dissertation in 2022, so very recently, and I did it on risky play because it's just a topic that I feel very passionately about. And I believe that, I'm an educator, so I do believe in teaching other teachers to be comfortable with risky play, so that all teachers in all programs can have a bit of risky play in their day, not necessarily just because they're in a forest school or a nature-based program, but all the different kinds of programs can embrace risky play.
Thank you. And I would say that there are sometimes that weather is dangerous. Like I was just reading about the earthquake in Turkey. So sometimes there is weather that we need to take shelter in, but oftentimes we can be out. And I know from many of you that you do get out in all kinds of weather, which is fantastic. Okay, so I want you to kind of think back to your childhood. Think about some of these activities that you did, and feel free to kind of raise your hand if you've done any of these things, or type a memory in the chat if you remember any of these activities. Did you ever ride a bike with no hands? I know that that's always like an exciting moment when you can get to that point of riding bicycles. Did you ever climb on top of a roof of the house or another building? I see some people. Yeah, that was like, I remember the ladder on the side of the house to go up and down, up and down. And I think my parents were trying to encourage me to get over some of my fears with that. It took me a while, but eventually did it. Did any of you experiment with matches? Notice I did not say play with matches, but experiment with them. Ours might have included cotton balls and hairspray and fingernail polish remover when I was in junior high school. So it wasn't when I was young, too young. And I wouldn't necessarily encourage people to do that, but that's just what we were doing. Did any of you wrestle with a sibling? I'm a mother of 4 boys, and there's a lot of wrestling, and it is not just for boys. It happens with everyone, it seems like. Did you ever get to walk to the store by yourself or with friends? And I remember doing that at a young age, and I lived in Northern Indiana in Elkhart. And I mean, I had an older sibling with me, but she wasn't that old. She might have been 10. And she had, all the way down to age 4 with her, and we'd walk to McDonald's or to the movie theater or something. Did you ever go outside without your parents? Yeah, I did all the time. My mom talks about Fish Lake, just up in Michigan. She would go in a canoe, a boat, across the lake to go visit her friend, and her parents worked, and she was home with a babysitter, but she just kind of had free reign of what was going on. And what about using a tool or a knife? Have you ever done that? Oh, Debbie talked about being sent to the store at age 7, a few blocks away, and she'd get lost coming home every time. There is a TV show on Netflix based in Japan right now, and it has all these little vignettes of young children walking to the store, doing some type of activity by themselves. And of course, there are camera crews, and there's a community around them that's helping them. If anybody knows the name of that, put that in, but I will try to link it in the ICAN update that we send out as well, because it's kind of fascinating. I actually lived in Japan twice, about 2 times each, and I would see 6-year-olds on the subway by themselves with the equivalent of like $100 bill in their hand, just going where they needed to go. But in Japan, that kind of independence is fostered a little bit earlier. There's a different sense of community, kind of village around helping people. Did this make anyone feel uncomfortable thinking about these things? Feel free to raise your hand or share if this wasn't something that you felt particularly comfortable with any of these.
I never did any of these things as a kid.
I wrote all these out, and I have clear memories of doing all of these. And Joanna was like, nope, didn't do that, didn't do that, didn't do that.
Well, I did wrestle with my sister, but not when my mom was home to know that we were doing it.
Yeah, old enough. Thank you. Yes. And it was fascinating to watch. I haven't watched all of the episodes, but just thinking about differences in society and what we might be able to replicate and do in our own society as well. So this is a question that we wanted to get started out with. If you can type in the chat, how are you comfortable with your child doing some of the things that are here? It doesn't have to be all of them, but no way, 0. Or up to 5, would you say bring on the risky play, or you're not quite comfortable, or you're somewhere in between? where do you fit in that? You can show us on your hands. I'm a risky play person. And also recognize where, you know, where I live and the context and some of those things that I need to do. Audrey, you're not the only person that I've seen, and Megan, with husbands being a lot more safer, I guess, and that's not, I mean, not that risky play isn't safe, but I've seen that sometimes men, and we actually did a whole study about this, that men sometimes they're the ones that are like throwing the kid up way high in the air, you know, but then other times they are very cautious with their children as well, as they take on that protector role as well. So, and yes, that village of 2,000 people, yeah, you know everyone around you. And Debbie made a good distinction. It depends on whose kids she's with. And yeah, I can see that as well. For me, there's a lot of nuance and caveats to it. Yeah. And coaching them first, Sarah, you think about, you know, if your nieces and nephews are responsible, coaching them before letting them do some of those things beforehand. I will say that risky play does not mean go out and do whatever you want to do. Just like we teach our children to cross the street, there are some basic things that we teach our children in engaging in many types of risky play. And we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And I see lots of 4s and 5s. We do see some issues with where we're kind of been moving toward trending in society. We are seeing that things like monkey bars and swing sets are being removed from playgrounds. And in our research on tree climbing, there are documented academic research articles about injuries on monkey bars and what's going on there. You know, so kids do get hurt sometimes. Tag and cartwheels are being banned at times. We're also seeing high screen time for children. Also see children that are often overscheduled. And then recess and outdoor time at schools are being limited. We see children that are more risk averse. And we'll talk a little bit about Angela Hanscom, and we are reading her book for a book club right now, Balanced and Barefoot. But she's talked many times about how kids are just like falling out of their seats in their classrooms because they're not getting that regular outdoor time to learn how to negotiate their body all the time. We're finding children that are risk averse. And I know that I, as a parent of teenagers, I'm finding that some of my teens, and I'm not the only one, I hear it from other parents, that the teenagers are not wanting to get their driver's license at 16. Like, I know that was like, you know, first day you would go get that license because you were really excited about having that independence and such. So we're seeing a little bit of risk averse children. And in this article, Today Parenting, I'll send a link out to that as well. They mentioned like psychologically fragile children as well, children with some more anxiety. And then like we see in the picture, the bubble wrapped child. And that's actually in many different cultures. It's sometimes the cotton wool wrapped child, but just the aspect that our children are being overprotected and like wrapped up so safely or such close rein on children that they're not ever doing anything that makes an adult gasp. Kind of like the quote that we had from Angela Hanscom in our write-up about tonight, that children should be able to do something that makes adults gasp. And we're also seeing a lot of helicopter parents that are there all the time in kind of micromanaging children. And then we also have that stranger danger fear. But if we kind of look at many of these things, some of them aren't happening in the same ways. The stranger danger, it's usually someone that is known and trusted within our families that harms a child, as opposed to stranger danger. That is not happening as much. Yearly broken bone stitches from swings and slides, lots of injuries, typical collisions as well. Yes. Yes, there is a recording. We are recording right now, and we'll send it out, Alejandra. So thanks for being here with us. Okay, yeah, and Amanda, I live out in the country as well, and so it's harder for my kids. We have a big highway outside of our neighborhood, but it's hard for my kids to walk somewhere by themselves. We have talked about, like, could we drop them off at a trailhead and they could ride their bikes together to the library, or some kind of activity like that, so that they can get some of that as well. Have you seen any of these issues in your own house, your family, your extended family, your neighborhoods, your children's schools, any of those things? And some of you may have younger children that aren't quite there, but have you seen any of these issues, and which ones concern you? Feel free to type it in the chat. You are welcome to unmute as well if there's any of those that you want to talk about. And I would say that, with COVID, we are seeing a lot of effects on children with that. And someone just mentioned that the preschoolers in a couple of years will not have gone through COVID. But I would say across the board in early childhood settings that I've been in, the educators are saying that the children aren't quite where they expect them to be. And we just embrace them wherever they are, but COVID has made an impact on some of these things. So
In my work, you can definitely tell.
Oh.
You can definitely tell the students who were maybe like 1.5, 2, just starting that real language development. When the program shut down, much more so than in previous years. So, and then the social emotional thing as well, definitely is a thing. Where we were like, gosh, it seems like a couple years ago, a 4-year-old, we'd have no problem with this, and now we're all melting down. And yeah, and that's kind of, blaming on COVID feels like a band-aid to just say, to write things off, but it is a concern, and it is something that we, in early childhood, that we do consider.
And self-regulation, I see that, I'm having bigger struggles with that all the way across the board.
Yeah. And hopefully we can use this as an opportunity to recalibrate if we need to, look at different educational options, and think about how we parent as well. Others have mentioned that even like pulling back a string on a bow, that's difficult for some children. They're not having that same strength that children earlier did. Is Mari or Mary, I'm sorry, not sure exactly how it's pronounced, but talked about the limited outdoor time in many urban neighborhoods. And so some risk averse children. I love those neighborhoods where there's just like a gang of kids that, they kind of all meet up and run around the different backyards and such, but not everybody has that, and Megan mentioned at the public school where she worked that tag wasn't allowed, but the kids wanted to play it. Yeah, so interesting to see how we can play some of these things and also be aware that we're not harming other people as well. It's not that we want children to go and get hurt. There is the risk of getting hurt, but we don't want them to get hurt. And know a couple of helicopter parents, and it feels more rigid and tense, and you kind of feel bad for the child with that as well. Thank you all so much for sharing. Mary, okay, thank you. And you sound flexible with your pronunciation, so thanks. Go ahead, Joanna, you can change it to the next slide.
So I touched on this a little bit. I feel like we talked about the social emotional skills due to being in lockdown for COVID. But when in the education world, when the researchers who study these kinds of things, when they come out with their kind of, what do you take away from your research, your summaries, they're realizing that when children are not given the opportunities to learn how to take risks, to learn how to identify what's a safe risk and what's a hazard, they begin to make rash and reckless decisions, and that's where the injuries come. So that's when we go from allowing a child to climb a tree to then we say no climbing, and then they kind of wait until no one's watching and climb. They climb too high, they may jump and end up hurt. So that's kind of why we want children to take risks, because we want them to learn while an adult can help them kind of figure out how to do this in a safe way before they go and make these rash decisions. And Carla talked about getting driver's licenses. Well, something that people say is, I'd rather have them take a risk when they're 4 than when they're 16 and behind the wheel of a car. So I touched a little bit about how to make a safe risk. What we call those risk management skills. So lack of having risk in our lives and lack of knowing how to handle and manage risk can actually hamper children's development. So if we're not giving them opportunities to fail at something, right? To figure out and problem solve how to climb a tree, then we're not allowing those skills to develop. So then we're seeing social, emotional, cognitive development delays. We're seeing gross motor delays, and then that is not something that we want, right? And it's harder to teach risk once the delays are there, because we're so busy catching up the delay that we so it's kind of like a big circle of lack of risk and development. And then also this one that I deal with is that grown-ups, and I chose grown-ups because we are definitely talking to parents and teachers and caregivers and anyone who's just with children. We kind of are looked at as, we're reckless ourselves. We're the hazard, right? Because we're letting our children do things. And that is definitely something that as a teacher, we definitely feel, particularly the program that I'm in, is we find ourselves talking a lot about, oh, yep, today, yeah, we were climbing and I actually walked into a branch myself, but a branch grazed the cheek, and this is what happens when we take risk. And we're always kind of a little bit, oh, what's mom gonna say when she finds out how you did this? Thankfully a lot of them are like, oh yeah, no big deals. Scars are fun storytellers, or story starters. So thankfully a lot of parents who know that their children are going to take these risks, they're okay with it. And then someone mentioned the self-regulation skills, and absolutely, I mentioned failure, and failure is can lead to frustration and not being able to handle frustration. If you're not taking a risk, you don't have a risk to fail, and then you can't practice that how do I handle failure. So there's a lot of different things that go through a teacher's head when we talk about risky play, and it's good to know that people are out there researching. It's good to know that that there are people who are interested in hearing what we have to say about risk, and it's very exciting to be here and to dig in with this. So I'm really happy to be able to share this perspective with you.
Okay, this is a quote from the article today, from Today Parenting. Children are meant to be risk takers. So even though, we saw some of these issues that are happening, children really are wired to take risks. Mother Nature made them that way, while also providing them with the ability to know just how far to push the boundaries. And I see that all the time working with children. They're kind of watching and they're thinking, they're concentrating. There are infinite benefits to kids being allowed to take the risks that nature intended, and there are infinite problems resulting from the lack of opportunity to take those risks. And really considering what happens if we don't allow children to take risks, that worries me a little bit. There is one researcher in risky play named Maria Brusoni. She is in Canada, and her whole job is to keep people safe. That is what her role is in the Canadian government. And she studies risky play as part of that, because, and she advocates for risky play, because if we want to keep people safe, they need to understand and know their boundaries and how to move about in the space around them. Go ahead and switch.
All right.
Are you taking this one, Joanna?
I think that was the plan, right?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. Oops. Alrighty, so I talked about the people who study such things, and in 2007, a Scandinavian researcher watched children playing. Some of them were from an nature-based program, and some were from a quote unquote regular program. And she kind of she categorized what she was seeing as risky play. And I did mention that this was in Scandinavia because risk is a cultural construct. And as some of you may know, in some Scandinavian countries, being outside, taking risks in play, it's part of their culture, where it might not be so much in some American cultures. So it is definitely something to consider as you look at these. These are kind of universals, as risky play is a universal thing. It happens, all children do it to some extent. And so here we can kind of see, now this is not meant to, it's not necessarily like an objective, right? To make sure that the children in your lives can take risks in all of these ways. Certainly, just give you an idea of what you might see as what is risky play. And I will say right now that when I'm at work, rough and tumble play is something I just flat out say no to. There is a bit of stick play that I will allow, because I see it says fencing with sticks, but I just do not care for it, and it makes me too nervous, so I say no. And then I work with teachers who are like, nope, we are not going to, she doesn't like them up too hot. She's got like a hard stop where you can climb, and that's okay. So as you read these and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to let anybody do, a fire pit. That's perfectly fine. Don't feel like if you want to be a risk-friendly adult, you have to let the children in your lives do all of these things. So that's just kind of what there is. And there are some researchers who are kind of adding categories, but as far as I'm concerned, with my philosophy of risky play, the new kind of categories just kind of fit into where these already are. So, and I will say my favorite type of risky play is high speed, mostly because I really enjoy sledding in the winter with my students. It's a lot of fun to watch them kind of figure out how to go down faster or how to go down slower, to figure out how to, what happens if they fall out of the sled, so, and it's just a lot of joy. And we got to do some the other day, and so I'm still kind of enjoying the endorphins that created. So so these are your risky play types. And like I said, don't feel like you have to, as you're watching someone play, categorize all their play and know exactly what's going on. These are just some different things that you might see in the children in your lives.
I would say along with that, sometimes you may see an activity kind of cross more than one category as well. So, there may be heights and speed or something of the sort. These are general categories. And I wrote in the chat, do any of those categories surprise you, or, some of the subcategories? Have you seen any of those in your spaces? So Mrs. K talked about not doing sticks because they're not controlling, not hitting their friends. Other times they have. So you do use hammers and screwdrivers and things, but not the cutting tools. And so each setting, each family kind of chooses what works for them, knowing the children that are with them. And Megan mentioned about that, getting lost and being able to find some more ways to allow that. F with risky play. As they get older, they want to do more independent things. And so, Joe, you're right. There's so much that's part of active, engaging outdoor play. And honestly, even like when we were doing research on tree climbing and such, Oh, some of the examples that we found, like we pay money for our children to play soccer, and I have seen wrists get broken during soccer games. And there are real risks for people, and there are ways that we can mitigate some of those as well. Go ahead and to the next slide, Joanna. Thanks. Did just want to kind of mention, we do have in Indiana, in Indiana Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights, lots of great things that our children should have a right to do regardless of ability. And one of those things is climb a tree, which would be part of risky play. So even within that, we have that. So go ahead to the next slide. Okay, just wanted to highlight some of this work from Angela Hanscom as well. Tree climbing, in her book, she writes, and I was actually able to talk with her at dinner while I was working on some of the research that we did. We've been published in 3 different academic studies with this, and then other articles and such. But tree climbing helps children to assess risk, understand their own abilities. It gives them a challenge, something they're working to. Checking and assessing a tree as well. They climb as high as they feel comfortable. And you'll notice oftentimes that children are only climbing a few feet at first. They're not going super high. Through the practice, they learn what their body can do. And then they start learning how to assess for potential hazards as well. And I know many people do that assessment with the children as much as possible. And then they also get great life lessons. And once again, we are doing this as a book study. We'll be discussing this early March, this book. So feel free to grab a copy. We try to check to see if things are on Hoopla and libraries and things like that, so everyone can have access to them. So our next slide. And this is from some research that my colleagues and I did, just the benefits of risky play. This was actually in the context of tree climbing, but they also work very well for risky play in general. So if we think about why we even care if children are doing risky play. They're developing critical thinking. That's a class I teach at the college level. Their imagination and creativity is being fostered. They're problem solving. They're developing self-confidence. They're doing interaction with other children sometimes, depends on the activity. That dexterity and physical strength, that's happening as well. And that cognitive and emotional strength, just resiliency, being able to pick up and go again, and negotiating that risk. And then also, especially from trees, spatial awareness, looking from ahead at the top and seeing different perspectives and such, but then also just considering, where in the space around us are other things. Yeah, Mrs. K, we will do some more things about other ways of saying be careful with this as well. Are any of these benefits that you would love to see in your children, in your setting, whatever that may be? Oh, and Debbie, yeah, I'm glad that you all love tree climbing. 2 years to 12 years, they all love to climb the trees. And you've got shorter, smaller trees, the apple and cherry trees.
Branches.
Yeah. Did you have something else to share, Debbie?
No.
Yeah. These are the benefits, and these are skills that I still use as an adult, and we need to help children early on. And it's just fun to be outside enjoying some of these activities as well. So we didn't include this, and it feels strange that we have to justify why risky play is okay, but these are some of the benefits that we've seen through the research. Go ahead, Joanna. Are you talking about this one?
I can.
Okay, go for it.
So risk and hazard is something it was actually my first introduction to risky play. We had an author named Rusty Keeler, who some of you may know the name, came and spoke at my program. And the first thing we talked about was risk and hazard. So a hazard, like it's in the slide, something a child does not see. And also something we talk about with our students is it's something that probably will hurt you. And that can be a little scary, but using Carla's fantastic climbing a tree. So if you're climbing a tree over rocks, probably if you fall, you'll probably get more hurt than if you just fell onto the grass or the dirt. And then a risk is a challenge. And we call it challenge by choice at my program. So it's something that you can see and you can think, yes, I want to climb this tree, or maybe I'll just make a fairy house at the bottom. So, that's the challenge. And maybe I make a fairy house today, but maybe tomorrow I try to climb the tree. So we definitely try to encourage children to take risks as they are comfortable, but we also encourage them to look for the hazards. And one of the jobs of a risk positive or risk friendly grown up is to look for those hazards, because sometimes children are just so excited to get in those branches and tell stories to trees, which is something that I did not know was happening in my program until today. So students are just so excited that they're not thinking about things that will hurt them. They just want to get to their activity. So that's where adults come in. So that's why risky play is not a free for all, totally unsupervised, go and do whatever, particularly at a center or at a playground where there's other people. But that's why adults supervision is such a big part, is because our job to find the hazards and also not be the hazard. I find sometimes I wonder if I'm impeding the play too much, I become the hazard. But and so the sentence at the bottom is a very important thing. When we take apart all of I think we talked about this, when we take away all of the risk, then the child can't figure out if this is safe or not. And then that's when they start taking these big, crazy things. There's a show out there that they do all sorts of crazy, dangerous stunts. And I always think, well, that's what we turn our kids into when they're not, when they don't know how to assess their danger. And when we teach them about their hazards and we model that over and over and over again, they start to be able to do it from themselves. And that's something that I'm seeing in my program is students who I've been with for a few years. They're checking the branches, they're checking for rocks. They know like, oh, this tree is almost dead. I'm not going to climb it, that sort of thing. So it really, so teaching these words, and some people have other words, risk, reckless is another big one. But this is kind of how we can separate the hard nose, right? It says too hazardous, let's find something else.
Yeah, and a couple of hazards for tree climbing in particular would be like an electrical power line running through a tree. That would be a no-go. Or a bald-faced hornet's nest in a tree where they are very likely to sting multiple times, probably a no-go. And then as Joanna mentioned, just like a tree that is dead, that's not going to be able to hold up a child's weight and such, watching for dead limbs and branches. Go ahead and advance the slide. And we may need to pick up just a little bit faster, Joanna. So just myself included. So just kind of getting comfortable with risky play. It sounds like we have people in our audience right now that feel pretty comfortable with risky play for the most part. In our research, dealing with, we've looked at some studies with parents, but then also with early childhood educators. But sometimes we just need to recognize some of those fears in our risk comfort levels. And for different activities of risky play, it may vary, as we mentioned before. Look at those benefits that we mentioned of risky play earlier, consider why it might actually be allowed, investigate potential safety guidelines. And even within families, we found that many parents would have like a height limit. You can only go as high as I can reach, or whatever it may be. So, parents and educators alike are having safety parameters around the activities that are happening. We might conduct a benefit risk assessment where we go through and systematically think about the things that might happen and how we can mitigate injury and such. And really, if we look at low injury statistics for natural or risky play in natural playscapes, it is low. It's a lot lower. There's a different type of engagement than when children have already mastered the risk of the monkey bars and are pushing the limits and doing things that the space was not intended for. So we can go ahead and to the next spot. Okay, did want to talk a little bit about a hummingbird parent. I don't know if you've ever heard this. As opposed to a helicopter parent, a hummingbird parent is nearby, but they don't hover over the children. They're distant enough to let the child explore and learn, solve problems, etc. We teach skills by example. We zoom in when their survival is threatened. Not all the time, when they're threatened. And it's not that we're trying to give them a risk-free childhood, but a resilient life. Does this concept of a hummingbird parent kind of resonate with you at all? That's just an option of what we could do instead of being helicopter parents, perhaps. So yeah, it's a good one. So go ahead to the next slide, please. And earlier, I think it was Mrs. K was saying something about the words that we use. And I remember clearly as a parent when I realized, be careful, what does that even tell my child when I say that to them? And I started saying, be aware. And since then, I've also found some information from Child and Nature Alliance out of Canada, and then also from Backwoods Mama that help give additional options besides be careful. Like, notice how this is happening. Do you see? Try moving this way. How are you feeling scared or excited or safe? And then just the what's your plan? That's almost always a great phrase to use. How will you do this? And then in the one on the right, they have it for the different categories of risky play as well. So like if we take sledding, playing with great speeds, you know, I've noticed that this is a really busy area. I'm worried that someone not playing or not sledding might get knocked over. Watch out for other people and give them lots of space. You know, so just having other words, other vocabulary and phrases that we can use at a go-to to allow the risk, but also recognize the issues that may be there that we need to be aware of. And that's totally fine to be doing as part of it. And like we shared the example of crossing the street. Children still cross the street and we teach them how to do it. Go ahead, Joanna.
I was gonna say, I like to say, pay attention to, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's a great one. Okay, so as far as assessing risk, this is some examples and help from the Child and Nature Alliance from Canada as well. So sometimes we just need to press pause if we notice something's happening, you know, find a signal to the children so they can come together, stop what they're doing, and chat about it. They suggest maybe a wolf howl. You may have a different way to get their attention, and then get everyone on the same team. Ask them what they want to do, so it's clear, and then also acknowledge that what they want to do looks fun, and make clear that you want to have it happen if you do, if it's possible to do it safely. And then also the 3, share your concerns. Identify the hazards and the risks that may be there. Depending on how old the children are, you really can share those concerns. Like the sledding example, they're children down there and we don't want to run into them. Or like going up the slide or down the slide. You know, when I'm in a setting with my children, where there are lots of kids at the playground, we just don't go down the slide. I mean, up the slide, usually in those situations. But if there's not as many people and they can communicate with the people at the top, you know, that's okay. But we go through and share the concerns of why we may want to do it. And the children can be involved in this as well. Okay, and then 4, generate ideas about how to be safe or mitigate the risks. And the children, like I mentioned, they can help come up with many of those as well. And then 5, go for it or don't. Like, it's okay to say no to some of the things that's not going to be okay. Sometimes the risks outweigh the benefits, the hazard, the potential benefits that are there, and we may say no, and that's okay. We're going to go ahead to the next slide. Okay, dealing with judgment. Do any of you get this? This came up in our research with parents, especially a lot. These are some things that I've thought about it. I've thought for a long time that I should just have a card printed out. My child's engaged in risky play. These are the benefits, or have a QR code that they can go to the ICAN website or something like that. If anyone wants to volunteer to make something like that, we can have little printables there. You're more than welcome to. But these are some things that I thought about. You know, I'd be curious to know why you think this isn't safe. to engage in dialogue if you want to go there with it. Sometimes just being closer to our children helps the people that have the judgment kind of realize. And I also want to mention that usually these people are well-intentioned. It's not that they are trying to be mean or anything like that. They just they haven't embraced risky play the same as we have, and they may have forgotten their childhood. So remind them of their own childhood. Think about what they may do. And then share a resource, like I mentioned, the card or something. You can also say out loud how you are keeping your child safe, and or have the child share what they are doing to keep safe as well. Go back to those questions, and like that backwoods mama, different things to say instead of be careful. And I do a lot of outdoor programming and nature play days and such, but I keep those and I hand them out like candy to people around me all the time, just because I think it's such a good resource. And then you could just say something simple, have a phrase already in your mind. I've got things under control. I'm right here. Thank you for your concern, etc. And several of the parents here mentioned having some judgment with it as well. Yeah, there's some comments there. And, I have been at the playground with one other mom. She did not let her child go up the slide. I let my child go up the slide because there was 2 kids at the playground, and the children coexisted peacefully. And the parents, we coexisted peacefully, even though we had different takes on what should be happening there. So it can be done. So thank you for sharing some of those things. Yeah, we need to make that happen, Mary. It's been on my to-do list and mine for a long time. And if someone else wants to help with it, is helpful. And as Joe mentioned earlier, empowering the child to make wise decisions regarding their own destiny is an outcome that comes from risky play. Competence is not a shared attribute. They need to own it. It's an individual thing that children need to go through as well. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, we'd like to go ahead and get into some breakout rooms where you have an opportunity to share through some of these scenarios. And we'd like you to go ahead and think about how you might respond in a situation like this. I'm going to go ahead and make some breakout rooms, and then go ahead and I will copy and paste these into your breakout rooms. We are not going to have a facilitator for each of these, but so just go ahead and jump into the conversation, and we'll have a few minutes just to kind of chat about these as well. So let's see, we're going to do 4 rooms, I think, and you should just be added to one right away.
Carla's coming in. You're muted, Carla.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that. There you go. You guys can chat about this, and hopefully it looks like this should have gone out to everyone, the questions. Go for it. I've been
Good.
So discuss any of these, Carla.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Or make up your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was saying, I definitely did some risky play stuff that my parents didn't always know about. But I felt, comfortable doing what I did because I had lots of experience playing outside and doing the things that I was doing that had been supervised. So, yeah.
This last one here, you notice a child playing with a stick at soccer practice. His mom says to stop. I'm the mom that writes an article in the local magazine about the benefits of stick play after I see that happen, and engage in conversation with that parent. and talk about, and the child was near a car. They didn't want the car hurt. Like, well, is there a safe space that the child can do this, you know, etc. So, but I'm that mom.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. I am, my husband always says, you're the most non-confrontational person except with me. Because I think things, but I have a really hard time like engaging in conversation like that. But I am more of a, go ahead, you can do it. Just if these parents are not engaging in that kind of play, like, let's just go over to the side, you know, so that we don't make anyone feel uncomfortable.
And I know some families that go other places instead of the popular places so that they don't have the judgment or pressure from other families to tamper down what they're doing or whatever it may be with risky play. Amanda, any thoughts that you have?
I just struggle with I have a child care center in my home. We're licensed for 18. I'm usually overstaffed. I have 3 other staff with me. We've had a lot of kind of freak accidents. So now I feel like we're just so paranoid about everything. Like in the past, I mean, this is 22 years that I've been doing this at home. 11 has been as a group with these other teachers as well. And in like, I think it was in 2020, we've had started having our first like reportable accidents that kids had to go to the doctors for. So one of them was we had plastic. There were plastic pieces long, like I don't know if they were really 4 feet. They're to make pallets, I guess. But we had these great long plastic pieces, and the kids would set them up to balance on. Well, a kid had set one up and another got a finger under it and she got stitches in her hand. And there was like 2 teachers that were very, very close, and everything just keeps like happening very close and like but now we're freaked out about everything. So let's see.
And it's hard when you see that. My child had an accident in our home about a year and a half ago where he ran around a corner on a slippery, like the basement floor, and barefoot, stepped on a piece of paper, fell. He ended up with a brain bleed. We cannot control accidents. In the situation that you mentioned, and that I saw some people kind of putting it up like, see, you have to be careful. I'm like, no, this is an example. Like, we cannot keep ourselves safe enough to prevent accidents. And so grateful that there were emergency personnel that could take care of him and he's fine. Not all children survive those kinds of things. And like that finger, talking to the children about checking to make sure no, you know, those are things that you can know going forward and things like that. But accidents are going to happen, and there are more research studies with manufactured things around risky play as well. We do need to head back pretty soon. I'm going to head out and go ahead and broadcast to everyone. But if there's anything else you want to say, you're welcome to.
Oh no, that's fine.
I feel like risky play, it definitely depends on if it's other people's children or how well you know the groups. Like we have school field trips come to the park and kids pick up sticks, but they're all near their class and they just got off the bus, so they're just like wah! And it's like no, this is not gonna be probably the best environment for that. I'm okay with kids playing with sticks, but maybe not in that situation, that environment where there's
Hey, we're starting to get our people back. little by little. It worked again. So, I don't know. I was having issues before, but that happens sometimes, and that's okay.
There we go.
Okay. I think we have everyone back pretty much. I want you to consider, how it felt going through that process of kind of considering that. And I want you to consider, how are you feeling with risky play as a parent now, or educator or aunt or caregiver, adult, and dealing with interacting with children. Are you still on the no way? I don't think we actually had anybody there. Are you feeling a little bit more comfortable with it, and or like you have some tools that may help you? Feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat, how you're feeling with that. And to me, and I heard this in the conversations as well, it is a dynamic thing. It's not a, oh, we're good with risky play. Someone gets hurt and that kind of resets things sometimes. Or we're with a different group of children that we're not used to. And we don't, like, I know one of my children's friends, he seems like a wild card to me. And so I don't allow as much risky play necessarily with him around, because I don't know what to expect from him. And I don't know that he, but I can set parameters and still try to find safe ways to do the things that he wants to do. Joanna, I cannot see the chat anymore. If you want to share any of the things in the chat, you're more than welcome to. So.
Sure. I did see that someone was reminded that there's a reason for risky play, and that sometimes we need to be reminded why and how. And absolutely, I agree with that 100%. That knowing your why helps you to know why your yes is right, why you're doing a yes.
And then some of you may be wondering, like, why is there a keyboard up here? This is a technique that I use a lot when I'm debriefing after something. I want you to find a key on here. In person, I actually have keys from a keyboard that we pull it out and need to make a connection. You can find any key on here and make some kind of connection to risky play and what your intentions are with that. So I might choose control. I need to let go of some of the control and share that control with the children so that they can learn and negotiate risk on their own as well, building up their own skills and resiliency as well. So I encourage you to just kind of think about what one of those may be. I may choose a space bar. Sticks need lots of space. And I do have a podcast episode all about stick play, if that's helpful for you on the loose parts nature play thing. But I encourage you to think about what's your takeaway from risky play from this. It could be F, find like-minded friends to meet up in the playground or the park or the woods, wherever we may be. Or G, go outside more, any of those things. If you could just go ahead and write an intention that you have around risky play of some sort in the chat, that would be great. Might have to shift perspectives.
Oh, Sarah has said she wants to shift to allow more inappropriate ways. I like that. Love that.
I would say that fire is probably like the dangerous elements is one of the ones I see happening the least with younger children and in more formal settings. It's usually more in informal education settings that I see it, though many families have a backyard fire pit and the children can be involved in that. And they learn to be around it by being around it. They learn to make a fire by making a fire. And that doesn't mean there aren't parameters. We have those safety things there to help mitigate some of the issues that may arise with it.
With a question mark from Megan, asking questions rather than saying be careful.
Ooh, I love it.
Yes, I'm a big proponent of using language to ask questions to build relationships, because I think when you have a relationship and you have trust, then children are more willing to maybe go the next step. You can scaffold their risky play to teach them the next thing.
Yeah. Do just want to share quickly some of the things that we have coming up. We have some seasonal discussions and book chats Thursday evenings. You can see the dates, but Balanced and Barefoot, Beyond Ecophobia, Vitamin N, There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather. Last month, some of us got to meet Linda Atkinson McGurk at a Nature Play Day in Carmel. So we appreciate the people that helped make that happen. What a great opportunity for all of us. Also, the Nature Play Days, June 2nd through 12th. Watch out for those in your communities and or be the people that help make Nature Play Days happen in your spaces. Go talk to some of the natural resource providers or your parks and or just create something on your own. We would love to see that happen. And in the newsletter, there'll be information about signing up to host those and to attend those as well. And then we do have a whole series of webinars like this year. And February 9th, that's tonight, we're doing the Risky Play. We'll be looking at using apps for outside. April 27th, August 10th, the benefits of nature. And then November 2nd, we'll be looking at Indigenous perspective. So feel free to join us for any of those. And then we want to hear if you've got any other questions. What other questions might you have? I know that I got a private message about, let's see, Mary, are there trainings and manuals for adults who supervise risky play areas? Yes. Are you in Indiana, Mary? Are you still here? She may have gone. Oh yeah, you're still here.
No, I'm here.
Yeah, are you in Indiana?
I am in Indiana, but the community I work with is in Illinois.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. I know at the Indiana Early Childhood conference, I just put in a session proposal for risky play, like for educators. I do have some resources and such. You can email me and I can send some information out to you about that. For
Great,
the,
I appreciate it.
yeah. So I just put my email in the chat there. I like what Joe said down here too. Hoping to help people recognize hoping to help people recognize personal bias and not allowing fear to restrict a child's potential, hoping to help shift relatively new cultural norms. And really, it's shifting back to how many people grew up. When I talk about these topics or even loose parts with older people, they're always like, that's just how we grew up. That's how we did it. But we've the pendulum that we see in education moving back and forth. We've moved to this kind of ultra safe kind of situation where I think that we're kind of shifting back to go back over the other way to allowing some additional options and such. And, you know, from our research that we've done with the tree climbing, we've got, you know, that fear is a big thing. And it's not just fear for being hurt, it's fear for liability of someone being hurt on your property or any of those kinds of things. Yeah, Nature Preschools and Forest Kindergartners. That's a great book by David Sobel. Rusty Keeler, you mentioned earlier as well. He's got a book as well. There's
several.
Yeah, he does. So, and then there's some articles and things out there as well. But does anybody have any questions or things that they would like to discuss? You're welcome to come off mute. I can even stop the recording if you don't want your question recorded. We can respect that. And thank you all for being here, and feel free to keep putting questions in if you want to, or staying online if you want to after this. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you for taking your time to show up this evening and engage in conversations around risky play. Consider alternatives and other ways of doing things, and or kind of reinvigorating your love for risky play and allowing children to be children and do the things they naturally do. So thank you for all that you're doing in your roles as parents, community members, early child care providers, nature, ICAN ambassadors as well, and all the many hats that we wear. So thank you so much for being here, and hope that you take that keyboard key thought with you out as you go back into your spaces to interact with children in risky play. So thank you so much for being here. And huge thank you to Dr. Joanna Spotts. We really appreciate you taking your time to be here as well and share your expertise. Is there anything else that you want to share?
Not right now. Well, I kind of want to move to Indiana now. Uh,
There's good stuff happening in Vermont.
Well, I grew up in Michigan, so I am
Oh.
kind of close. I lived in Maine and Alaska, and we moved to Vermont, and I said I never want to move again, but
But maybe.
I am just starting to kind of explore the possibilities of doing webinars and workshops and professional development. So you never know, I may see some of your faces or names another time. I'm doing another workshop on risky play. That's kind of where my passion lies. And I just like to echo Carla, just thanks for doing what you do. You have a passion for something that's similar to a passion that I have, and that passion brought you out tonight to take some time away. Sarah, well, thank you for asking about my workshops. I will hopefully be able to post them on Carla's Facebook group until I get my own Facebook group. Like I said, really just getting started. I never thought that, I never knew what I would do with my doctorate. So I didn't, so I thought, oh, maybe I'll do some workshops now that I feel less like an imposter. So
Sarah, I know how to get a hold of her, and you know how to get a hold of me. So feel free to reach out to get contact information too.
Yeah. Stay passionate about whatever you're passionate about is what I was gonna say.
Yeah. And we're all still figuring out, I'm figuring out what we want to do when we grow up. And I also have workshops and things that I do. loosepartsnatureplay.org is where I put mine out there as well. So thank you all again for being here. We appreciate it. Have a great night.
Bye,
and
everyone.
have fun doing some risky play this weekend or
Yeah.
next week.